Hello, I'm Spice Mama, and today we're going to be making Denali dressing. Denali dressing is obviously great with turkey, but I'm going to be using it today with a stuffed pork chop. So let's get going. So first of all, we're going to be sauteing, and we're going to be melting a half a cup of butter, and I like to use this sea salt butter. We're going to be cooking a little bit of mushrooms, some 4 stalks of celery, a medium-sized onion, and an apple, a small apple. So this all goes into the stuffing, and then we've chunked out some bread that was sourdough bread that was pretty good, but it was not cutting great. So I made it into bread cubes for the stuffing, and we're going to be putting that all together here. So the first thing we do is we're going to throw in the onions. And you've heard me talk about this before. I don't like to brown the onions, I want to sweat the onions. And that's what we're going to be doing today. So we're going to be sweating the onions. We're going to add in the celery. And we're adding the apples. We're going to put the mushrooms in later because we don't want those to get totally soggy. So here we go with this. Once we have all the ingredients sauteing besides the mushrooms, we're going to throw in a tablespoon of our Denali dressing. You always want to heat up the spices. It makes more oil come out. They pop. It tastes a lot better. So when you're cooking with spices, they used to brew beer and we'd put hops in at different stages of the brew. And it's the same thing with spices. You want to put some in the saute. You also want to put some in as a finishing. And so with Denali dressing, we put a little bit into the saute. Here's what it looks like here. We got our lovely onions, and those apples make it pop with the celery and the apples. We'll be adding the mushrooms later. We just added the mushrooms. You may have noticed that I chopped all of the celery, the apples, and the onion pretty much the same size because it helps them cook uniformly. And you want to keep it small for stuffing. You don't want to get big chunks of stuff. You want the bread to have the ingredients to be able to go all around it. So when you're making stuffing, make sure you do about a 1/2 inch to a 1/4 inch chop on your celery, your apples, and your onion. And same with the mushrooms. Mushrooms are cooking now. We add in a cup of chicken bone broth, and I have a recipe on the Alaska Spice Shop website about how to make chicken bone broth. We use Poultry Guy seasoning for that. So I'm going to put that in to heat it up, to add it to make sure it gets all coated in when we add in the bread. Now that our chicken broth's heated up, our vegetables are cooked, we're going to be throwing in our bread cubes, and we're going to mix them all together. Here's our 4 cups of bread cubes. Typically what I'll do with bread cubes is I'll take my heels of my bread and the bread that's not good anymore, and I dice it up into cubes, put it in a bag, and put it in the freezer, so that way when I want to make stuffing, it's all set to go. We were looking at some of the commercial boxes of stuffing mix, and we were kind of surprised at some of the ingredients in there, and we couldn't even pronounce them. And Spice Mama's rule, if I can't pronounce the ingredient, I'm certainly not going to put it into my body. And here's our stuffing. It's beautiful with the nice bread and all the fresh organic ingredients we used with the Denali dressing. Now, one of the things I do right at the end is I taste it. And if it needs a little more flavoring for me, I'll throw a little bit more of the seasoning in. It's always easier to season more than to unseason, so I think this is a good idea to do this. So let's taste it. Let's take a little taste of the bread to see how it is. It's perfect. I'm not going to be seasoning this anymore. It's going to be going to the side. If I was going to be doing this for Thanksgiving, I'd stuff the bird, or I'd put it in a casserole. I'd put it in the oven. But it's going to be going to the side. We're going to be putting it on top of our pork chops and covering the pork chops with a cream of mushroom soup. Stay tuned.